February 25th, 2025. A farmer's son from Bangladesh steps into the ocean with nothing but a bottle of water and a dream so impossible it borders on madness. He's about to take his first step that only one other human has attempted in 35 years. And that person had money, sponsors, and a plan. He had none of those things. In 84 days, one of two things will happen. His name will be written in history, or his body will be another statistic. He just doesn't know which yet. This is the story of Ikramul Hassan Shakil. Welcome to the Extreme Edge. To be honest, I'd never heard of Ikramul Hassan Shakil until I started researching extreme Everest expeditions. And then I came across a headline from May 2025 that seemed impossible. It said, Bangladeshi climber completes sea to summit Everest expedition in 84 days. My first thought was, wait, what? Sea to summit? Like starting from actual sea level? So I started digging, and what I discovered about Shakil completely changed how I thought about what it means to truly climb Mount Everest. See, here's what most people don't realize. When you hear someone has summited Everest, you probably picture them starting at the bottom and climbing to the top, right? Wrong. Most climbers fly to Lukla Airport in the Khumbu region, which is already at 9,380 feet, nearly 2 miles above sea level. From there, they trek for about 2 weeks through 40 miles of mountain scenery to reach Everest Base Camp at 17,600 feet. So by the time they even start the real climbing, they've skipped the first third of the mountain's altitude. They've also skipped all the lowland walking, all the gradual acclimatization, all the boring parts. They've taken a shortcut. And look, I'm not judging. It makes sense. Everest is hard enough without adding unnecessary difficulty. But Shakil looked at those shortcuts and thought, what if I don't take any of them? Instead, he added more obstacles on the way. Ikramul Hassan Shakil was born January 1st, 1994, in Bagchala village in Ghazipur district, Bangladesh. His parents were farmers, not wealthy landowners, actual working farmers who tilled soil and worried about monsoons, the kind of family where an unexpected expense could mean crisis. And here's the thing about Bangladesh, his home country, it's really flat. The average elevation is just 280 feet above sea level. The highest point in the entire country is around 3,300 feet, which wouldn't even get you halfway up to Everest Base Camp, the lowest point on the mountain path. So when you grow up in Bangladesh, climbing mountains isn't a common dream. The Himalayas might as well be on another planet. But Shakil just didn't care. He was obsessed with mountains from childhood. He was so obsessed that when he was in class 10 at 15, his father noticed something was off. His son would sit alone in the bushes writing poetry. He'd talk about becoming a snake charmer one day, a cricketer the next, then abandoning all practical dreams entirely. Concerned, his father gave him 3,000 taka, about $25, to see a psychiatrist. Shakil took the money and went to Bandarban instead. That's a hilly region in southeastern Bangladesh with actual elevation changes. And that trip changed everything. I had a stubborn belief, Shakil later said. Even if I couldn't finish my education, someday people would read about me. My name would be at the top of the world's history. Now, you might be thinking, okay, big dreams for a farm kid from a flat country. What's the big deal about that? But here's where the story gets interesting. In 2014, at age 20, Shakil did something almost unheard of for a Bangladeshi with limited means. He traveled to India's Nehru Institute of Mountaineering for formal training. This wasn't some weekend course, but a serious professional mountaineering education, the kind that teaches you how to survive on a mountain. He learned rope systems, crevasse rescue, altitude acclimatization protocols, and ice climbing techniques. He absorbed everything like a sponge. Technical skills keep you alive. And in no time at all, his dedication paid off. By 2019, Shakil had become the first Bangladeshi to summit Himlung Himal, a Himalaya peak in Nepal. Now, most people have never heard of Himlung Himal, but let me put it in perspective. That's 23,379 feet, higher than any mountain in North America. It's a serious technical climb that kills people. Shakil stood on top at age 25, and he was just getting started. Tiny detour on this chaos train. If you'd like to be part of the extreme community, get early access to our videos and exclusive polls, come join us on Patreon. In 2023, Shakil attempted something even more extreme, the Great Himalayan Trail. Now, if you've never heard of the Great Himalayan Trail, let me explain. It's a 1,050-mile route across the entire length of Nepal, crossing some of the most remote, dangerous, and beautiful terrain on Earth. It passes through elevations from 500 feet to over 20,000 feet. It crosses dozens of high passes, requires technical climbing skills, and takes most people who attempt it between 4 and 6 months. Only 33 people in human history had ever completed it when Shakil started. He planned to do it in 100 days. The journey was hell. Twice, massive landslides nearly buried him alive. Monkeys stole his rations, forcing him to forage for wild mushrooms to avoid starvation. Torrential rain in remote forests left him hypothermic and disoriented. Throughout the journey, death knocked at my door several times, Shakil later recalled. And then, in December 2022, disaster struck. A financial crisis forced him to retreat from Sapru base. Most people would have called it quits right there. They'd say they tried their best, blame circumstances, and move on with life. But Shakil went home, worked multiple jobs to earn more money, and returned in May 2023 to finish what he started. Because for him, quitting wasn't an option. It had never been. He later completed it in 109 days and made history as the first Bangladeshi ever to finish the Great Himalayan Trail. But standing at the end of that 1,050-mile journey, Shakil felt unstoppable after this remarkable achievement. He thought, what if I started from the ocean? See, only one person in history had ever completed a true sea-to-summit Everest expedition. In 1990, an Australian climber named Tim McCartney-Snape walked from the Bay of Bengal to the summit of Everest, about 750 miles over 96 days. It was, and is, still considered one of the most audacious mountaineering achievements ever recorded. For 35 years, no one had even tried to match it, until Shakil looked at that record and didn't only think of repeating it, but thought to himself, I can do it faster. By late 2024, Shakil had a target date. In February 2025, he would depart from Cox's Bazar beachfront at sea level, walk through Bangladesh, cross into India, trek through Nepal, reach base camp on foot, and then climb Everest till he reached the peak of the highest mountain in the world. He estimated the journey would take 90 days. Yes, 90 days. 6 days faster than the only person who'd ever attempted this in 35 years. 90 days to walk over 850 miles before the real climbing even started. But there was one massive problem. He had no money. See, Everest expeditions cost between $60,000 to $100,000. Climbing permits alone were about $11,000 per climber in May 2025. For a Bangladeshi from a farming family, that's just impossibly expensive. It would take multiple years of income and a lifetime of savings to even have anything close to that in the bank. Shakil's mother had already sold family land to fund his Great Himalayan Trail attempt, contributing about $3,000. She had nothing left to give. To make things worse, his climbing sponsors hadn't committed. Corporate partnerships were uncertain. As February 25th approached, the expedition fund was basically empty. The obvious right decision would have been postponing and waiting for full funding and make sure every dollar was secured before attempting something this massive. But Shakil looked at that empty bank account and made a decision that was either incredibly brave or incredibly risky. He decided to start walking anyway and figure out the money along the way. But why? Because this journey wasn't just about breaking a 35-year-old record. You see, Shakil was a United Nations youth advocate for plastic pollution, and he'd seen firsthand how his own country was drowning in waste. Cox's Bazar, where he planned to start, has some of the most polluted beaches in Bangladesh. Plastic bottles, bags, and waste littered the same coastline where he'd take his first steps. And Everest, the world's highest mountain, has become one of the world's highest garbage dumps. Decades of expeditions have left oxygen canisters, torn tents, food wrappers, and abandoned gear scattered across the slopes. Shakil's plan to walk from one polluted place to another, collect plastic waste along the way, engaging with local communities about pollution, document everything on social media, and show people that the crisis isn't just over there on some distant mountain. No, it starts at sea level, in your neighborhood, in rivers and beaches you walk past every day. From the sea to the summit, Shakil said before departing, I want people to see the connection. This earth is ours, and it's our duty to protect it. So, on February 25th, 2025, at 11 a.m., he stepped into Inani Beach with one bottle of water, a bag containing his essential documents, and zero money in his pocket. And he started walking north. He figured he'd find a way to make it work. He had to, because this wasn't just about personal glory. This was about proving that a farmer's son from one of the world's flattest countries could achieve something no one else on Earth had matched in 35 years. This was about saving the planet, and this was about making his mother proud. When I achieve something, Shakil said, I see pride in my mother's eyes. That's my reward. Here was his plan in full. Start at the ocean in Bangladesh. Walk 870 miles north through 3 countries, Bangladesh, India, and Nepal, until you reach Everest Base Camp. No flights or vehicles. Then climb the mountain to complete the challenge. The first stretch through Bangladesh should have been the easy part. It's mostly flat, mostly roads, mostly familiar territory. Except it wasn't easy at all. Shakil walked through intense heat on long highway stretches with no shade. Within days, painful blisters covered his feet, slowing his pace. Dust from traffic coated his lungs. The monotony of endless asphalt tested his mental endurance before any mountain even appeared on the horizon. From Inani Beach in Cox's Bazar to Chattogram, Chattogram to Feni, Feni to Comilla, Comilla to Munshiganj. By March 9th, just 12 days into the journey, he'd walked approximately 200 miles and reached Dhaka, Bangladesh's capital. And there, he did something that should have been humiliating for someone attempting a world record. He held a press conference and basically begged for money. It wasn't a victory lap, it wasn't a photo opportunity, it was desperation. The expedition was already in motion, but funding remained completely uncertain. He needed companies to believe in him, to invest in this crazy dream before it collapsed entirely. A few sponsors trickled in, not enough to fund the whole thing, but enough to continue his Sea to Summit challenge. From Dhaka, he pushed north through Ghazipur, his ancestral home. His mother met him on the road. She couldn't give him money, the land was already sold, but she gave him her blessing and a home-cooked meal. For Shakil, that was worth more than any corporate sponsorship. From then on to Tangail, then Siraganj, and then he hit an obstacle that should have ended the entire expedition right there, the Jamuna River. Now, let me explain something about the Jamuna River. It's the widest river in Bangladesh, stretching nearly 2 miles across at certain points. People drown in it regularly. The current is so strong, it sweeps away vehicles during the monsoon season. When Shakil reached the Jamuna Bridge and asked authorities for permission to walk across, they looked at him like he'd lost his mind. No, they said. For safety reasons, pedestrians aren't allowed. For most people, this would mean finding alternative transportation, taking a boat or hiring a vehicle or something. Shakil looked at that 2-mile-wide river with its brutal currents, thought about the 185 miles he'd already walked, thought about the 1,200 miles still ahead, and made a decision that defined the entire expedition's audacity. He would swim across. But here's the problem. Shakil wasn't a confident swimmer. And the Jamuna River doesn't care about your dreams or your determination. It just drowns you. And here's where the story gets really amazing. Remember that desperate press conference in Dhaka where Shakil basically begged for money? That went viral across Bangladesh. News outlets were covering this farmer's son attempting to break a 35-year-old world record. His story resonated, especially in Bangladesh's endurance sports community. When word spread that Shakil was going to swim one of the most dangerous rivers in the country, a handful of volunteer athletes decided this was their chance to be part of history. Homaid Ishaq Moon, an Ironman triathlete, saw the news and thought, this guy is attempting something nobody's done in 35 years. If he drowns in the Jamuna before even reaching the mountains, the whole dream dies. I can't let that happen. Moon reached out through mutual contacts, and so did a guy named Mohammed Hela Uddin. A couple of other endurance athletes whose names were never recorded joined them. These weren't paid guides, they were Bangladeshis who wanted to see one of their own accomplish the impossible. They wanted to tell their grandkids, I helped Shakil survive the Jamuna. I was there when history was being made. So they met Shakil the next morning at Bagil, swam the smaller Bangshi River as a warm-up, then turned toward the real monster, the 2-mile-wide Jamuna crossing. It took 4 hours. Moon later described it. The Jamuna current was brutal. Shakil, exhausted and not a confident swimmer, struggled with every stroke. I had to take hold of Shakil, pushing forward despite my own fatigue. It felt endless. Midway through, Shakil struggled badly. They had to stop, tread water, try to recover, then keep pushing. With every passing minute, hypothermia became more likely. One mistake, one moment of weakness, and this story would end with bodies floating downstream instead of climbing mountains. When they finally dragged Shakil onto the far bank, he was shivering violently. His lips were blue. Moon and the others wrapped him in their spare dry layers, and through chattering teeth, tears mixing with river water on his face, Shakil smiled. "Maybe Everest will be easier," he joked. "You were my river Sherpas today." After the crossing, Moon and the others went home. They'd signed up to help him not drown for 4 hours, not walk to Everest. That part, Shakil would have to do mostly alone. By March 28th, after 32 days and over 600 miles of walking, Shakil reached Banglabanda Landport in Panchgarh. He'd completed the Bangladesh segment. His feet were destroyed. His body was exhausted. He'd lost a lot of weight. But now came the next problem. And this time it wasn't physical, but man-made. See, Shakil needed to transit through West Bengal to reach Nepal. Without an Indian visa, there was no way forward. You can't just walk across international borders because you're on an inspirational journey. So he applied, but the Indian embassy looked at his application and blocked it entirely, despite having an advisor's approval. The reason still remains unclear, but bureaucracy doesn't need reasons, it just needs stamps and signatures, and Shakil didn't have the right ones. For most people, this would be the end. The expedition would stop at the Indian border, 600 miles short of Nepal, go home, tell everyone they tried their best, and blame circumstances beyond their control. Shakil did something different. He posted a desperate plea on Facebook that basically said, "Please help. The Indian embassy won't give me a visa. My expedition is about to die at the border." It went viral. Media outlets picked up the story. News channels ran segments about the Bangladeshi farmer's son trying to walk to Everest, but was stuck in bureaucratic limbo. Public pressure mounted, and finally, on March 29th, officials relented. The visa was approved. But days had been lost. His 90-day timeline was getting tighter. Every delay meant less acclimatization time at altitude, less margin for error, less chance of success. Shakil didn't care. He had his visa, and so he started walking. Shakil walked through Jalpaiguri and Darjeeling in West Bengal, covering about 20 miles in 3 days. On March 31st, 2025, day 35 of the journey, he crossed into Nepal, and everything changed. Because now, instead of flat roads through Bangladesh or gentle hills through West Bengal, he was walking through actual Himalayan terrain. He needed to cover 240 miles over 30 days. Every single day taking him higher and higher to altitudes where the air was even thinner. See, here's what normally happens when you climb from sea level to base camp. At sea level, your blood is 98% saturated with oxygen. That's normal. That's what your body expects. But as you climb higher, atmospheric pressure drops. There's less oxygen in every breath. Most Everest climbers skip this entire experience. They fly from Kathmandu straight to Lukla Airport at 9,380 feet, already nearly 2 miles high. From there, they trek for 2 days to reach Namche Bazaar at 11,000 feet. Some climbers even charter a helicopter straight from Kathmandu to Namche Bazaar directly, skipping Lukla entirely. Either way, by the time you reach Namche Bazaar at 11,000 feet, your blood oxygen drops to around 85%. Your body has to produce more red blood cells just to function. If you climb too fast, you get altitude sickness. Your brain swells, your lungs fill with fluid, you die. Most trekkers stop to acclimatize there. In fact, the standard protocol was to climb high, sleep low, go up during the day, descend at night. Let your body adapt gradually over 2 weeks. Then, once you reach base camp, the real acclimatization begins. Professional climbers spend 4 to 6 weeks doing rotations, which means climbing from base camp to Camp 1 at 20,000 feet, sleeping there, then descending back to base camp. A few days later, they push to Camp 2 at 21,300 feet, sleep, descend. Each rotation is like a training session for your blood, forcing it to adapt to functioning with less oxygen. Most climbers do 3 or 4 of these rotations before attempting the summit. It's tedious, it's uncomfortable, but it's what keeps you alive in the death zone above 26,000 feet. But Shakil didn't have that time. Days had been lost due to the visa situation, and his 90-day timeline was getting tighter, so he just kept walking. 10 to 15 miles every single day, always upward. His body had to do 2 impossible things at once: recover from the exhaustion of daily marathon distance hiking and adapt to oxygen levels that were dropping with every step. And remember, he'd been walking for 5 weeks straight before that. No rest days, no reset, just keep walking up. It's like trying to train for a marathon while someone slowly turns down your oxygen supply. Despite the odds, on April 29, 2025, day 64 of the expedition, Shakil reached Everest Base Camp at 17,600 feet. Now at this point, he had walked and swam 854 miles from the Bay of Bengal. But Base Camp wasn't the finish line, it's the starting line. And Shakil was about to face a problem that money and determination and sheer willpower couldn't fix: time. Instead of a month for acclimatization rotations, Shakil had 6 days. That's it. 6 days to do what normally takes a month. At base camp, he joined 8K expeditions and was paired with a Sherpa guide named Tashi Galjan. From May 6th through 10th, Shakil completed just 1 acclimatization rotation to Camp 3 and back. 1 trip up, 1 trip down. Then he rested at base camp until May 16th, hoping his body had adapted enough to survive what was coming. Was he ready? Absolutely not. His acclimatization was dangerously inadequate. The risk of altitude sickness was unacceptably high. Any competent climbing doctor would have told him to wait, to do more rotations, to give his body time. But Shakil had walked 854 miles to get here. He'd nearly drowned crossing a river. He'd fought bureaucrats and sponsors and his own exhausted body for 64 days. The thought of quitting now when the summit was so close was worse to him than the thought of dying on the mountain. So, on May 16th, Shakil left base camp in the early morning darkness and started climbing toward Camp 2 at 21,300 feet. The route took him straight through the Khumbu Icefall, a constantly shifting maze of ice glaciers, where climbers had been crushed without warning in the past. He crossed aluminum ladders lashed together over crevasses, moving as fast as his exhausted legs would carry him. By late afternoon, he reached Camp 2, having climbed 4,000 vertical feet. That night, he collapsed in his tent, gasping in the thin air. The next morning, May 17th, came the Lhotse face, a 4,000-foot wall of near vertical ice. Shakil clipped into the fixed ropes at dawn and started hauling himself upward, 1 agonizing step at a time. Every breath burned. His legs felt like concrete, but he kept climbing until, hours later, he reached Camp 3 at 23,600 feet. Then, on May 18th, Shakil pushed to Camp 4 at the South Col, 26,000 feet. And the moment he crossed that line, everything changed. Because now he was above 26,000 feet, in the death zone, where oxygen drops to 1/3 of what it is at sea level. That night, Shakil lay in his tent at Camp 4, unable to sleep, gasping for air in brutal winds. His body was shutting down, but he wasn't done yet, because the next day, the final push would begin. 8 to 12 hours of climbing through darkness to reach the summit. May 19th, 2025, Summit Day. Shakil and his Sherpa guide Tashi Galjan left Camp 4 in the darkness before dawn, beginning the final climb. Almost immediately, everything started going wrong. At first, it was the weather. A massive snowstorm was rolling in from the west. Visibility dropped to near zero. The temperature fell below freezing, and the wind, strong enough to blow climbers off the ridge, began to hammer them with every step. Shakil could barely see Tashi ahead of him, just the faint glow of his headlamp disappearing into swirling white. And then, about 2 hours into the climb, Shakil felt something was wrong with his breathing. The oxygen wasn't flowing right. He checked his mask. The tube that delivered the oxygen from his tank had frozen solid. Ice had clogged the line. Without oxygen at 28,000 feet, you've got minutes before your brain starts shutting down. Shakil had to remove his oxygen mask just to breathe, exposing himself to the death zone's suffocating air. I can't even imagine how terrifying that must have been. You're at 27,000 feet, your oxygen isn't working, and you can feel your body starting to shut down. Many climbers behind him turned back. Even his experienced Sherpa guide, Tashi Galjan, asked if they should retreat. It was the smart call, the logical decision. Turn around. Live to try another day. But put yourself in Shakil's shoes for a second. You've walked 854 miles over 70 days. You nearly drowned crossing a deadly, vehicle-swallowing river. You fought bureaucrats, poverty, and exhaustion. You've spent every penny you had and money you don't have. Your mother sold her land for this dream, and now you're 2 hours from the summit, and your guide is telling you to turn back. What do? Shakil looked at Tashi through the blowing snow and said, "We keep going." So Tashi worked on the oxygen line, clearing the ice, and they continued climbing. 20 minutes later, it froze again, then again, and again. Every time the line froze, Shakil had to rip off his mask and breathe air so thin it felt like drowning. His head pounded, his vision blurred, but he kept climbing. They pushed higher, past 28,000 feet. The storm worsened, and that's when Shakil saw something strange. A shape in the snow ahead, a bright jacket. As he got closer, he realized what it was. It was a body, a climber who died recently, still in full gear, frozen on the route. Shakil kept moving. What else could he do? 100 feet later, another one, then another. 5 bodies total, scattered along the route to the summit, all recent deaths. People who'd attempted to reach the top and never made it back down. One of them, in fact, was someone Shakil had eaten breakfast with at Camp 4 that very morning. Shakil stood there in the howling wind, his oxygen pipe frozen again, staring at the body. "I nearly lost all willpower," he later said. "I thought, even if I reach the summit, I won't survive the descent." But at that moment, Shakil thought about one thing that gave him hope. The red and green flag of Bangladesh was folded in his pack, the flag his mother had blessed before he left, the flag that represented every impossible step of this 90-day journey. He made up his mind. "I'll raise my country's flag at the top of the world no matter what." So he kept climbing. And thankfully, at 6:30 a.m. Bangladesh time on May 19th, 2025, Ikramul Hassan Shakil stood on the summit of Mount Everest at 29,032 feet. He had done it. The Sea to Summit challenge had been successfully completed. Standing there, Shakil must have felt a mix of emotions. He was a symbol for every person who's been told their dreams are impossible. Every kid from a poor background who dares to believe. Every mother who sacrifices for her child. He raised the red and green flag of Bangladesh at the top of the world, 84 days after touching the ocean, after walking 870 miles across 3 countries, after nearly drowning in the Jamuna River, after climbing with no guarantee he could pay for it, after passing 5 frozen corpses on the way up. When he safely descended back to base camp, he hugged his Sherpa guide Tashi Galjan and broke down in tears. "That's when I truly felt victorious," he said after. Let me put this achievement in perspective because the numbers are staggering. Shakil walked to Everest faster than anyone in history. Tim McCartney-Snape's 1990 record was 96 days. Shakil did it in 84 days, about 12 days faster, and he walked a longer route, 870 miles, compared to McCartney-Snape's 745 miles. He became the 7th Bangladeshi person ever to summit Everest, but the first to do it via a sea-to-summit route. If Guinness World Records confirms it, he'll hold multiple world records. Youngest person to complete a sea-to-summit Everest expedition at age 31. Fastest time from sea level to summit at 84 days. And longest distance for a sea-to-summit journey. But the why is what's really amazing about this story. Shakil's journey carried something big. A message that starts on polluted beaches and ends at the top of the world. His message from the summit cuts through all the noise. This was a message from the sea to the summit. I wanted to shout, "This earth is ours. and it's our duty to protect it. If we don't act now, there may come a day when Everest, the paths we walk, and the air we breathe no longer exist. In mountaineering history, Shakil's expedition will be remembered not just for records broken, but for what it represented: pure determination over shortcuts, environmental consciousness over ego, national pride over personal glory, and maybe, just maybe, it'll inspire some kid in a flat country somewhere, dreaming impossible dreams while their parents worry about practical matters, to believe that ordinary backgrounds can achieve extraordinary things. But what do you think? Does this change how you see what's possible when you refuse to accept shortcuts? Have you ever committed to something so completely that turning back wasn't an option, even when logic said you should quit? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay bold and live brave.